Yeah. Awesome. So now I want to do announcements. I only have a couple. My first one is that November is Youth Homelessness Awareness Month, and that's super cool. The YAB has a lot of really cool things planned for this. We have a donation campaign going on. You can find the link on our website, on our social media, both Instagram and Facebook, and I can also send out an email with it as well. We are also planning on going into schools to talk about youth homelessness and what it looks like and what resources are available if you're experiencing that. We're also going to be hosting a cold weather gear drive, getting hats and jackets and blankets and whatever else we can. So yeah, lots of cool, exciting things coming in November. Also, oh, Forrest put the link in the chat. Awesome. Thank you, Forrest. There's a cool conference happening on November 16th. And it's from Point Source Youth, and it's the Western Conference. And I was looking at the agenda, and there's a lot of really, really awesome topics being discussed. And I'll find the link and put it in the chat to register. But I wanted to let you all know that that's happening, and it's via not Zoom, but it's like Hopin is the name of the site that it goes on, and it's a really awesome experience. And I just wanted to invite you all to attend that if you have time on the 16th. Does anybody else have any other announcements they wanted to talk about?
Maya, I don't have an announcement, but I'd love to know what format you all are going to be using when you go into the schools, just because I work really close with all of our school districts, and we've got a pretty significant youth population that are homeless, 18+ year olds. And so I would really love to kind of maybe know a little bit more about that once you start, and see how we can foster that into our school system here in San Juan County.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually going to be talking about it in tomorrow's YAB meeting and getting the final details kind of worked out. Right now it's kind of just a idea, but we've talked about bringing in like a fully stocked backpack with all the essentials that you'd need on the streets, and kind of having an interactive bit of like just pulling things out, make sure you have change of socks, a water bottle, your charger. If you're diabetic, make sure you have your insulin. If you're on medication, make sure you're stocked up on your medication. The importance of tarps. I'm going to bring in a tarp and show people how you can make shelter out of a tarp. And we also want to have the focus be on resources, providing the BOS CES hotline. If we're in Santa Fe, going over street outreach project, and just kind of basing it off of where we're at. We want to go into schools in Gallup, Santa Fe, Espanola. And yeah, so we're going to work out the details next YAB meeting, and I'll send you guys a debrief about what we come up with. Maybe we can even record one of the first sessions that we do in the schools and kind of send that out to people. And if you're interested in us coming to Farmington, I'm super, super open to that. I'd love that.
Yeah, let's talk further about it once you all start rolling that out, because I also think maybe you guys could draw a little bit of attention to, you said it earlier, what homelessness looks like, because I believe that a lot of students and even teachers alike don't really know what it looks like because they're just not aware. And I think it would be helpful, because then they can, the counselors on the school campuses can also have a better understanding. So that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was homeless long before I knew I was homeless, because I was in a couch surfing situation or doubling up with my sisters and brothers in their own households because they had their families. And I didn't think that was homeless. I was like, oh, I have a roof, so it's a place, but I'm on a couch or I'm on the floor. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that's still considered homeless, and that you're still able to get help in those situations. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I'd love to develop that plan more and collaborate with you if that's possible.
Yes, I would be more than happy to work with you guys. So thank you so much. Reach out anytime.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to make sure I put that in my notes before I forget, because I'll forget. Yeah, so any announcements from anybody else? Anything else going on?
Yeah, I guess I should let everybody know what's happening on our end with the coordinated entry and the new HMIS. So as you probably already know, the actual projects and providers, you can enter things into the new HMIS and awards. but it's just our end and the coordinated entry and getting those clients in and their assessments in there that they're encountering issues with. So I know it's been like over 2 weeks for our data entry pause, and things are kind of stacking up and piling up over here. But we're doing the best we can to try to get it all the kinks out so that once we do enter that data, that it stays in there. So once I actually have the go ahead, I'll send everybody out an email and let you know we're entering the data. And so those VI SPDATs that you have sent in, they'll be inputted in the order that we received them. And if you have any questions, you can let me know.
Awesome. Last time, anybody have any other announcements that they want to share before we get going? Yeah, Tracy.
Yeah, I don't know how many single parents, mothers or fathers there are in the program, but I learned of through early childhood development, there is a pretty awesome program where young parents can get employed at a daycare center, and they can get full services for their child to be at the daycare center, entry level, working in the centers. They have raised the starting rate to $17 an hour. And if any of those individuals are interested in pursuing early childhood development in any community college, the governor has passed funds for the first semester. If they go through the first semester with 6 credits or less, when they finish that semester, they receive $1,000 cash. And then if they take 9 credits or more, and they finish that semester, they receive $2,000 cash. And it's just an incentive for them to become certified in early childhood development. So there's a lot of really good options for young parents to become employed and ultimately receive some education with a financial benefit. It's a win-win. So just wanted to share that. I just placed a young mother. She just texted me this morning that she got a job. So her child will be in daycare, she will be working, and she's going to go to school. So it's pretty amazing. So that's my information to share today.
That's fantastic. That's phenomenal. How would I get somebody in contact with whoever would help with them with that?
You know what I will do? I will reach out to my contact here and find out. She's on the committee. She's on a board under the governor. I'll find out who could speak to the group, and maybe next meeting we can have them present on the changes that have happened. So I'll reach out to her, and then I'll get with you, Maya.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to learn more. I have a couple of clients who are young parents who are looking for employment, but having a baby, it's hard to get them in daycare. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, if you could connect me with somebody, I would love to learn more.
Okay, sure.
Awesome. Super cool. I'm gonna do one last round. Anybody else have any cool announcements, anything to share, resources, anything?
Remember to vote.
Yes, remember to vote. Awesome. Well,
that's a big thing. I also was finding out that there's been a lot of weird stuff going on in the polls. They're trying to switch from going to the polls to vote to just voting from home. And when you send them in, it's way easier for the votes to get tampered with. So there is a way of getting involved with it is by being a poll watcher. And you basically go to just watch and make sure everybody's being honest with their voting, and just watching it. And it's kind of a first step to getting involved with politics and stuff like that,
and policy
and policy for different things like that. So
homelessness is one of them,
and policy. Yeah. anyway, that's like a cool thing I might get involved with coming up. If not this year, then next year, but it's definitely important to vote because it's coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I actually plan on talking about voting and policies a little bit in tomorrow's YAB meeting. So if you want to kind of facilitate part of that, I'm super open to that.
Cool. Yeah. And the website is rpbc.gop dash poll challenge.
Awesome. I said I would love to share that with the YAB tomorrow.
Or just Google poll watchers or something like that too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm sure I can find it. Yeah, thank you so much for that update. I really appreciate that. Cool. So I do want to move on to our topic because I feel like it's going to take up a good bit of time. We are going to be talking about exiting today and kind of the protocol and procedure that goes around exiting from rapid rehousing programs like STAR. So I kind of wanted to maybe go around or have like the group kind of share what is your current procedure when it comes to exiting? How do you prepare clients for that upcoming exit date?
I can talk on behalf of, at least what we do here at the Santa Fe STAR program. So we don't have like a formal transition plan, which is something that I never really thought about how important it was until recently. But from the day that a client enters the program and they're housed, every month when we do their check-ins, talking about goals, figuring out what they need support on, we always bring up discharge planning. Even though it's a 2-year program, we're always talking about it. A lot of clients, they always say like, well, ideally I'd stay in my current apartment. And we kind of talk about what that looks like for them. We have questions on our monthly check-in form for case management, basically just asking like once their time in STAR is up, where do they plan on living? With whom do they plan on living? Is it permanent? Is it going to be temporary? And then we talk about the safety. So a little bit of safety planning in their exit goals. But that's, and that's every month that we talk about that. So it's not super formal. It's not exactly a transition plan, but we're just always talking about it. And then obviously, once we hit like that 6 months before discharge, 3 months, 1 month, we're getting a little bit more serious about it and making sure that they have as solid of a plan as possible.
So I guess I'll go. We're pretty much very similar to that process. Obviously, from the very beginning, if I've got a client that has their high school diploma, I'm really working with them to pursue either a trade, or if they would like to go to college, get into classes and work with them on that. And if they're not interested in education, then really focusing on obtaining some level of employment. If there is no motivation or desire to be doing that, or indication that they're really not making any progress, obviously through the 2-year process, we're working on long-term planning, housing stability plan, and really where will they go as soon as they reach that 2-year point. And so that's kind of the focus if they're not wanting to focus on education or employment, which I really don't prefer, because I think that that's the whole purpose of our program, because we want them to have some level of income or independence so we can transition them and they're able to stay in that apartment and manage. I've had a few do that and I've had a few not do that. So that's pretty much our process. And if there's any insight on how to motivate individuals in a better way, please do share.
If only we knew. Same thing. We work with them on their life skills, employment, and everything. We start a savings account for them, so that way they have a little nest egg when our program ends. Depending on how or where they're at, 6 months out before their end date, we start looking at apartment complexes and doing applications, because sometimes there's a long waiting list there. So we start working with them on that. If not, a lot of times they want to move to Albuquerque. So we, or out of town, out of Taos. It's small here. So we start looking for employment there and putting applications for apartments there. So basically throughout their time here, we work with them on saving money, education, work, savings, transportation, and housing. A lot of our apartments we lease, so sometimes they can't take the rent over, but then there's sometimes that they can. So basically the same as everybody.
Denise, I'm curious, what funds do you use to start the savings account with for the clients?
Well, we start if they're employed. We start it that way. We have a lot of youth in our Talea Fostering Connections, so they get funding through that or CYFD. But it depends. But it's employment, so their own savings, or if they have Talea or CYFD funding.
And I will say the same. I feel like we do similar things to everyone. With youth shelters, it's nothing formal. We don't have like a process for discharge. It's like nothing formal that way. It's just kind of what we practice at the office. I would say for sure at the annual, when we're doing the annual update with the client, we kind of reflect on the year, how fast it went, where they at, where are they with their goals? Do they need to change goals? Do they need to break it down differently? And also if they feel like they're not where they want to be, we start the application process for Gallup Housing Authority, because that's a year waiting list. So at least they have a year to kind of work on their goals, but also that would just be like a really backup plan, if anything. And I think that might be it, Jody and Ty. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, so what Yvette said, and I kind of just sometimes when I do because we have to meet every month and every 3 months as well to kind of just understand where they're at and what they want to do, but I kind of just try to remind them as much as I can, this 3 months went by fast, and the next 3 months doesn't go by fast. It's been 6 months and you've been in the program, so that's pretty much half a year. And do you feel comfortable where you're at? Do you think you can afford the rent where you're at, utilities, and just kind of giving them real life scenarios on what could happen and what might happen and the consequences of some things, and going back to school and getting a job. But I really like to talk about just real life scenarios once before they were in the program, now that they're in the program, and kind of where they see themselves in the future. But kind of basically what Yvette elaborated on.
Yeah, not too much to add to that, just talking about backup plans in case theirs doesn't follow through, budgeting to see if they are able to take over the rent. If not, then looking for local downgrading to maybe they were in a 2-bedroom, looking for 1-bedrooms. And if some of them are going to be, some of them already do have an idea of returning back home to family members. So just looking for rentals in that area. I have a client that's going to be transitioning back to her family in Farmington. So just helping her prepare with the move. And as far as housing, just looking over any damages, helping them move things to the dumpster if that's what they want, setting up storages. Yeah, just making it more of a smoother transition. And of course, it has helped us a lot too, just because things happen in life, and we can't control some things. So sometimes we get in situations where a client is in a crisis when like the last few months of them in the program. So we're very thankful that YAB approved to extend 36 up to 36 months, you know. So that's always very helpful. That's one of another tool that we really use if we really need to.
I have a question about that extension. If we have a situation like that, do we present it to YAB, Maya, or how is that process? I haven't had that situation, but I anticipate I could potentially.
Right, absolutely. I haven't been presented with that situation for the YAB. And I don't think I was with the coalition when that extension got granted. So maybe Forrest could speak a little bit more about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh, no problem. So we were talking about the YAB approving extending to 36 months, and Tracy had asked if that extension is needed, do you have to present that case to the YAB to get that approval, or how does that really work? And I wasn't with the YAB or the coalition when that was approved, so I thought maybe you could speak on that a little bit more.
Sure, yeah, so that goes in the replacement. So there's like grant renewals and grant replacement. And whenever the actual the YHDP process, they introduce those. So I think Youth Shelters and Family Services did that grant replacement. And whenever we had a vote and the YAB voted and approved that stuff, the way that letter was worded, it was for all these different ones, and I can try to find that letter, but each provider was included in that letter. So the YAB kind of already approved those things for each provider. I'm not sure, because Youth Shelters and Family Services already utilized that, if we would have to do a brand new vote if there was going to be that replacement process. If one of the providers decided they wanted to pursue that, we'd probably have to ask our local HUD office and see if that previous letter would work. But yeah, so the YAB has already voted and approved that for every single YHDP provider. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, if you could send that to me as well, I'd appreciate it, please.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So a question that came up for me during that conversation, and I'm just curious about it because I haven't really gone through the housing process with Rapid Rehousing. How abrupt is the end? Like, how abrupt is that exit? Once like that date comes up and you know, the lease has to get transferred or whatever happens, do you check in with that client after that point? And if so, for how long do you keep tabs on that client?
So for us, we have our exit, but prior to at least 3 months prior, I'm reminding them of their date where they would have to be exited off of the program if they've termed out. And then if they're at a point where they're non-compliant and we have to terminate them due to that, I will give them that month. But it's not like an absolute abrupt, like, okay, well, tomorrow, 2 weeks from now is your last day on the program. But we transition them in a way that prepares them. However, if they're not really doing a whole lot, having much sweat equity, I guess, if you will, into their own transition, then we're doing everything we can to help, but at some point there's only so much we can do. I don't know if that answered, because you asked another question, how abrupt, but then if we're preparing them.
Right, that was kind of a multi-tiered question. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that answered part of it. I guess like I'm talking more like, so after that date happens and say they've moved in with family or they've taken on another lease, do you check in after that exit date with them?
Yeah, so we have had clients that transition, the lease is in their name already, and then we say, okay, this is our last date to pay your rent, and now you'll be doing that on your own to the landlord. However, I'll follow up with you in 3 months. So I'll do like a 3-month check-in, And then if they're doing really well and continuing to maintain, then I won't continue that. But if they're struggling, then we'll schedule, you know, just regular check-ins for another 3 months. And then at that point, sometimes they may cycle back through, but that's been rare. So I do a 3-month and then a 6-month check-in. And then I have a 1-year follow-up, but I have not been able to really contact anybody at that 1-year point.
Right, that makes sense. Staying in contact is really hard, especially if they're not receiving like monthly, you know, updates or contact with you guys. I'm sure that's rough. Are the other programs kind of like that too? Do you guys have a 3-month, 6-month check-in after that exit date?
Yeah, so for STAR, we technically can provide up to 6 months of aftercare. However, we tend to lose contact with a lot of clients, especially if they weren't super engaged in the program in the first place. We lose contact with a lot of them, but yeah, we can do monthly check-ins for up to 6 months, especially at like 3 and 6 months, if we're able to get a hold of them, just to kind of check in and see how they're doing. Our clients, the lease is already in their name. We make the client and the landlord aware, if the client is planning to stay in that unit, that they're responsible for the next month's rent. So let's say we have a client discharging this month in November. We make the landlord and that client aware is like, okay, this November is your last month of full rental assistance. Starting December 1st, you are responsible if you plan to stay, and do not give your landlord a 30 or 60-day notice.
Same thing for Dream Tree. And at the end of our discharge summary, we ask them if they want to be in contact with us, if they need help. So they give us their information. We also have our aftercare program. So if they're still needing assistance with anything, we're able to do that.
Same with Gallup, but we have quite a few clients that we've allow them to still check in with us after the 6 months. So they'll still ask us questions, but we do plan discharge pretty early, so they kind of know, and we kind of let the landlord know as well. And then when they do exit, we do make sure they have a resource list to make sure that they have a list. And we've gotten help with the city of Gallup for that resource list, so it shows like all the like low income apartments, and then just housing, like rental assistance, food assistance, and it's a list that we make sure too that they all have, but they always have contact with us through our Facebook. And there's a few of them, quite a few of them that reach out more than 6 months, so we just still document it still just to have it on their file. And I don't know, Jody, Tyrell, if you guys want to add anything to aftercare.
Nothing really, just some of our clients, they do check in through Facebook, or some of them will stop by to say hello if they're in the area. Some of them will reach out and tell us that a client is potentially involved in the program, and we just tell them to get in touch with us. But that's about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Yvette and Jody covered most of the things in aftercare, so.
Awesome. And let's see, how do I word this? I guess my question is, what are some of the biggest barriers you guys are seeing to successful exits? Like, what are some of the biggest things that stand in the way from somebody taking on that lease, or, you know, successfully exiting your program? What are some of those big in the way barriers?
Motivation to really do anything beyond what they're doing. And sometimes I struggle because I feel like I've had a few clients who have just gotten super used to just not having to pay rent, not having to pay utilities, having an apartment, having someone check in with them on a monthly basis. And present all kinds of options. Hey, let's figure out, can you go to school? We've got, transportation. We've provided means of transportation. We provided ways to get around town. We've placed and housed individuals really central in areas where they can get employment by the college, everything. It's just motivation. And I struggle with that because at the end of the day, I mean, we can only do so much. So that's the biggest thing that I've had as a challenge with our program.
Yeah, that motivation piece is hard. I remember like several of my friends who did get housed with rapid rehousing programs, they would say, yeah, I have a house for 2 years. It seemed very temporary to them. They weren't thinking like, oh yeah, I have this opportunity to really, grow my savings or whatever for 2 years. It was like, this is what it is for right now. And they had no concept of after that 2 years. And that's got to be so frustrating. It was frustrating to me even back then. And now that I'm in this line of work, it's 10 times more frustrating because that's not the goal. The goal isn't to temporarily house somebody for 2 years. It's to give them that 2 years to foster all of these skills that they need to remain housed after that point. Yeah, so I'm curious, how can we combat that piece, that motivation piece? Yeah, but I'm curious from you guys, what do you think would be necessary to kind of convey that idea to people who are going into rapid rehousing programs?
Well, it sounds like no one's motivated to share. Just kidding.
Well, I'm trying to put something together in my head, like a, like maybe reverse psychology or something like that. That tends to work with some people that are rebellious, and a lot of homeless people tend to be pretty rebellious. Because it's their way of saying, F the system. I'm not going to play into it and whatever. But really, if you really want to F the system, you got to get good at the system. So, and then beat it from the inside, because being rebellious and anarchists on the outside, I don't feel like that really goes anywhere. So maybe like come up with some sort of reverse psychology concept where it gets them inspired to have the idea. I don't know, inception it or something, but essentially if they have the idea by themselves, then they're much more motivated to do it. I mean, if I have an idea myself, I'm much more motivated to do it instead of someone else like tells me, So I think there's different ways. I'm sure there's like different resources to find about how to motivate different people to help themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Sorrentino, I saw in the chat that you had some ideas. I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yes. For me, the thing that motivated me the most was how I should be finishing school, and thankfully I did that. And how Tyrell was giving me these type of scenarios about if I wasn't able to finish school, then I would have to repeat, then go through that whole process again, and it would be be overwhelming. And even now I still try to find a job, but unable to. And I am still aware that our 2-year mark is also coming up soon. So I want to be able to make a savings account of some sort to be able to move to another apartment or into a house, which would be cool. But yeah, I'm still motivated, but also lazy at the same time. But I guess it's just gotta take some time.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So it sounds like having somebody like kind of tell you, you know, the different scenarios that would play out if you didn't get that motivation, that was really helpful for you. Sorry, I'm taking notes. Yeah, Forrest.
Yeah, and I'm curious if this is like just a mindset, because a lot of the folks that we serve are coming out of very traumatic situations, and the trauma response, and just to kind of feel comfortable and safe takes a while. And there is, like you mentioned, Maya, that sense of everything is temporary, and maybe the clients have been bouncing around from place to place, and they know that the time's going to come where they're going to have to bounce out of this place. And it's kind of a change in mindset to say, you know, they don't have to bounce around anymore, to feel that sense of agency in the direction that their life is turning. And I think some of that maybe has to be focused on the trauma that they're coming out of, and how, and I don't know what each individual program is doing to help in that wraparound of the trauma response, and taking care of that healing process alongside the education piece and the employment piece. But I think for myself, looking at that, I think that's a huge part of the puzzle of each individual client, of where they're coming from and why they're in the program, and where they want to be and how to get there.
At this point in the meeting, a member of the core team shared some very insightful and important ideas. However, this member is not comfortable with their audio being shared in this space, so I'm going to do my best to fill in the blanks of what they said. Essentially, what they were trying to convey is that motivation has always been a conversation, and they really wanted to highlight a training technique called motivational interviewing, which is a skill you can offer to staff to help them understand that the youth are in the front seat. They get to make all the choices because it's their life. And we want to hear what that plan is and what their motivation is. You see, it's not that they're not motivated. It's that they're motivated with a plan and a strategy. If they're in the mindset that I'm homeless and this is a gig for now, but I'm going back to homelessness, so I shouldn't get too comfortable, that's a plan and a strategy. They're just not sharing that plan and strategy with me. But if they trust me and they understand that I want to hear that plan, then we can address the obstacles. Say they get a part-time job and they're showing up. That's a success. Well, then say they lose that job. We should evaluate that and see what internal barriers are keeping them from maintaining a job. It's about the relationship and also the referral to outside sources. Say there's a lot of trauma or substance abuse is on board. This is something maybe we don't look at enough or wrap enough service around. But he really wanted to convey that everyone is motivated with a plan that they have. It may not be the plan that we have, and it may be a short-term plan. But when you're in survival mode, everything is a short-term plan. So if someone's in that survival mode, there's a good chance they aren't going to want to shift that plan. So they are motivated. They have a plan. We just might not be having the right conversation to address that plan or that strategy. That's where motivational interviewing could be really beneficial, and perhaps we could have someone do a motivational interviewing training in this meeting. Essentially, if we don't have a core relationship with the client and we're not having these conversations with them, trying to develop a plan using motivational interviewing, it's likely they're going to stick to that survival mode plan.
Because you're absolutely right. There is motivation for something. It just might not be what we necessarily desire. And I love what you said about that. Definitely resonated with me. Tracy, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think another piece of that is, there's the motivation. I think the survival mode aspect is big, and it's definitely not to be disregarded. But I think when they've got the situation of safe housing and stable housing, there's that level of survival mode sort of removed. See, I think the other level is tied to fear. And I think that I've seen a lot of clients, having a conversation with them really is one thing. And that, the client saying they have the desire for say, a good example, I had a client she had the desire to go to school, to go to our community college. And I said, we'll make an appointment. She didn't make the appointment. So we finally I helped her make the appointment. And then I met her at the college and accompanied her with that walkthrough, because there's just that initial fear of going into a setting and actually doing something that they've thought they probably could not do. So that's the other level, I think, of survival mode that we sort of are tapping into with our clients. And when I speak to clients, I want to know, like, what is their dream? Like, what have they always thought about doing? And if I can kind of help them sort of overcome that fear, I share with them that fear is the thief of dreams. And if we don't overcome our fear, our dreams may never happen. And so if that means that I have to, in a small way, accompany them just to kind of hold their hand and then sort of let them experience it and know what it looks like, then I've seen a greater success. So I think it tied to that relationship, there's also an investment that is necessary for case managers and for our program to invest in sort of the success of our clients. And then if they're not interested whatsoever and it still goes nowhere, then there's only so much we can do, right?
I'm again going to do my best to try and repeat and convey the ideas of another team member. Survival instinct is not the only barrier. There are lots of examples, like fear. The importance is in having the conversations that uncover all of these barriers. It's not so much just like, I don't have income, that's an external barrier, which is still a barrier. But a lot of the time, the biggest barriers are psychological. That's where motivational interviewing can come in, utilizing strategic listening and reflecting and planning to uncover all the barriers so we can get out of our own way, move forward in life with support. This is and always has been a challenge in social work. Putting the clients into a house addresses the crisis and hopefully starts to alleviate that fight or flight mode. Then they can start to engage and we can let them know, okay, here's your opportunity. Where do you want to go from here? What do you want to do? Let's go. The sky is the limit. And it's important to establish that it is their plan. We're just here to talk them through it, talk it over with them, and help where we can. But it's up to them to decide how they're going to utilize this opportunity.
I like that idea, and something that's making me think about, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what Tracy said about that fear of going and doing something, and even if it is beneficial to you, being scared to do it. When you guys are doing these check-ins, do you go to the client's house? Do you have them come to your office? Do you go to meet for coffee or lunch or something? How do you do these check-ins? Because I know, like, from my own experience, if I had to go into like your office to fill out these exit forms and say these goals, I'm going to say a lot of goals that I know I probably can't follow through with because I'm in this space where I feel the need to be, I guess, like professional or to, make myself seem like I'm doing the most because I'm in an office and these people are paying my rent. So I got to make it seem like I want to be a doctor or a lawyer and I'm going to go to med school or law school. And that's a goal that I'm not really going to follow through with. Whereas if I was like if I was in my home talking to somebody who's having a conversation, I'd probably be more realistic about what I'm capable of doing, what I want to do. So I'm just kind of curious how that looks for you guys and where you guys conduct these check-ins.
We alternate. We do mostly at the home, and then we'll do like one at the office just to change it up, to make it, bring that to it of like, yeah, this is a serious situation. Like there are expectations, but we do want them to also feel comfortable. If it's during the summer, we'll go to the park or something. So we alternate.
So our meetings take place in the client's home, probably 90% of the time in their space. If they're unable to meet at the house because, it's just not convenient, which is rare, we'll meet at the public library. And I think in the office, it's only if there's a formal intention to meet, if we're needing to do something really formal, because that way they're comfortable. And so yeah, that's where we meet typically.
For our clients, it's total preference. Some clients don't mind me being in their space while they do their check-in. Other ones, I've never even seen their apartment because they just don't want me in their space, and I respect that. We do try at least every few months to do a home visit, just because in Santa Fe, like a big issue that we have with clients and landlords is the cleanliness of their apartment, because they don't have the life skill on how to keep up their apartment and keep it clean. So we try to do home visits to avoid it getting pretty bad. But yeah, it's like total preference of the client. Some I meet with them every single month in the office, and that's what they prefer. Other ones, they want me to come to their apartment, whether that's because they're comfortable with me in their space, and or they just don't have the transportation to get to the office. Just depends on the client.
That's awesome. I think it's really awesome that you guys kind of switch it up, and it kind of depends on the content of the meeting. Like if it's gonna be more formal, it's in the office. I think that's awesome and great, and I'm really happy to hear that. And then we have Morgan in the chat, and I want to touch on this because I think it's really important. So she said, we've moved on a bit, but I have a thought about survival mode. It can be really difficult to flip the switch from survival to motivation. When a young person is housed, yes, that need is now met and the survival burden is eased, but this might be the first time in years that the young person can rest, and they might need some long-term rest before they're able to recoup and rebuild or build momentum and motivation. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. I remember my first house, I kind of just stayed at home. I was a hermit for a little bit once I got my first house, not so much, but then once I got into that idea of I need to do well, I need to focus on my future, I became such a hermit. I never left my house. That was where I felt safe and comfortable, and I kind of hated going outside for a little bit. And so yeah, it's really hard to flip that switch. And I think that kind of talks to how we need to kind of focus on mental health a lot during that 2 years. We need to focus on addressing that survival mode and addressing the trauma response that might be happening within that client's life. So do you guys do any kind of mental health aspect to the goal setting and to the, exit planning? Is mental health really addressed?
For Dream Tree, we find that key, right? Because if your core, isn't stable, then it's hard to move on to get education and employment. If we push the employment and there's anxiety around that, we have to address the anxiety first. So we try to focus on that first, being able to be emotionally stable in order to move forward. Now the youth has to be willing to address it as well, though.
So to just go in on that too, it's almost like, used to this moving and getting up and going to a different place, and this addiction to travel and stuff. What are ways to kind of just stabilize the person, so they don't feel like they have to get up and go, and that there's something else better out there for them, if that makes sense? And get them, working and type stuff. What keeps them doing that besides just the short-term reward?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I kind of want to direct that towards you and Sarantino and Lakita. What would be the ideal exit protocol for you guys? So, you're in the Rapid Rehousing program, your exit date's coming up. What are some things that you think would be really important that you wish you would have worked on more in that process, or that you just think would have really, made the difference for you? Sorrentino, I know you mentioned how important it was that Tyrell was like kind of pushing you for your education. What else though? What other things has he done or do you wish had been done that would have really helped you along this process?
Some of the things that he tries to do is kind of hints out different ideas for jobs, or kind of thinking about where else to kind of live, or basically just different types of restaurants or grocery stores to work at. And he usually asks if I am applying for any jobs or anything, or if I'm preparing for that, or if he needs me to, or if he needs to review my what was that called, my resume. Yeah. He tends to be more open about it, so I think that's really helpful for me. But at the same time, I'm kind of confused, but also want to try and figure it out on my own. So that's why I don't ask too much of his help. But I do try to apply for different jobs around Gallup or outside of Gallup, but still no luck. So I think the one thing I want to be prepared on is at least having a job.
Right. And that's such a huge important part of it, is having that job and job preparation. So I'm sure that's a huge part of most of your guys' goal setting is how are we going to get you employed? And so I guess yeah, let's see, hold on. I'm trying to think of like where we can go with that. So, are there programs nearby you guys that like will do things like job training for like youth that are in programs? Like I know when I was living in Arizona, there was a youth shelter that worked closely with a pizza place, and you could be in like that TLP and work at the pizza place. Like the pizza place kind of outsourced to the youth shelter for their employees. Are there programs like that in New Mexico that I'm just not familiar with?
I think there are, but there's some other programs that also are like that, but they mostly deal with teens that are younger than I am, or their age limit is 18. But yeah.
Workforce Solutions, I know before COVID, I haven't tried it now, but they used to have classes on interviewing, on resume writing, that type of thing for people in general, doesn't matter what age.
Yeah, I was going to say Workforce Solutions in our area does provide the skills for interviewing, and also if clients are on TANF, then they fall under the Workforce Solutions caseload and have an opportunity through those. So that was one.
Yes, it's actually Workforce Connections where they have that program. I used to work there here in Albuquerque, and they have the YDI has the WIOA program. So they serve youth between the ages of, I believe it's 16 up to 24 years old. And they provide grants for school, so they're able to pay for some of your schooling. They also place you in what is called on-the-job training. So that's basically you're gaining work experience, and the organization is the one who's paying your wages. So you're getting paid, you're gaining work experience, and at the end of on-the-job training program, you're able to, if they have an open opportunity for you to get employed full-time, you have that chance to stay with that employer if the employer is comfortable with you, or if you're comfortable with the employer. And then they also have the same program for adults. So if you are in the ages of 18 and over and don't want to participate in the youth program, you can also participate in the adult program. And that is, it's almost the same. You have on-the-job training opportunities, and you also can get paid for school. So they pay like coding boot camps, that you can pay for like medical assisting certificates, things like that. So whatever you need to get back into the workforce. So if you're needing a licensure, if you're needing a like a certificate in order to get employed, you're able to get that help with them. And also at the New Mexico Workforce Connection, at least here in Albuquerque, they also have many tools you can get with a job coach, and they can help you with your resume. They can help you with applications. They can help you just to look for employment. So that is the great opportunity for any job seekers.
Another really cool idea that my mom had recently for my sister, because she recently just like had a baby, and she we reached out to different programs that the YAB was offering, but there was no support or help or anything. So we ended up finding a farm, like a work trade situation, just on Craigslist, out near El Dorado, outside of Santa Fe. And the guy that owns the land, he has a farm. There's cows and chickens and, you know, all the works and stuff. And he's like running this farm. It has a housing, it has like dorm styles type deal, blah blah blah, like straw bale houses. It's off the grid. It has, you know, solar. It's cool. It's like a great place for like rehab. You know, my sister did like rehab there and stuff. She had her, you know, she was pregnant when she moved there, and now she has her baby, which is now a couple months old. And there's been people coming and going, but the thing is like the price there, the guy that owns it, he's a capitalist, right? But he doesn't have money to pay the people that work trade, right? So it's just room and board, but it's almost like serfdom, because there's like so much work that it's like too much work to not being getting paid, and just also just like having a place to stay, because it is off the grid, you know, like there's limited limited power. It's not like an ideal situation, even though it is decent, but it's still not enough to just work and not be paid and live there. And so, but he was offering, since he can't pay, he was offering some sort of sweat equity into the land, because he has 300 acres, right? So if you like work hard enough, then you could, you know, maybe get some land. It was kind of almost like a carrot being dangled. And he's not really willing to write up any sort of contract for this. So we had this idea that maybe an outsider, myself or my mom, we could, you know, pay my sister for the hours that she works out there so that she gets paid, but then also that goes and counts towards sweat equity towards a piece of land. So I think this is a really cool idea, because I think there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of work that need to be done and stuff, and people want like a little piece of land to have something on. So does that make sense? So like there would be so just multiple, you know, people that need housing and stuff and need a job. They don't have an ID or anything, but they also like want to get something too in the end. Whether they need a place to live, but they also need to get paid. But then the benefit would be if there's an outside source that's paying the individual to work for the hours that they're working on some sort of project or land or what have you, that they would, those people that would be outsourcing would gain sweat equity into, you know, a place to like, you know, for their own. I mean, I think that's appealing to myself because I'm wanting to invest in land for myself. So I'm interested even though, you know, I don't make a ton of money, I make some, but, you know, I want to have land to invest in that if I, you know, if I paid my sister to work on this farm, she would be getting money. She would have a place. She wouldn't feel like she's like in a serfdom kind of slavery kind of type thing because being overworked with a newborn baby and stuff like that. So like it seems like everybody would benefit, you know, and then the landowner would be getting work on his farm that needs to be done. So it's kind of appealing to me, and it could be appealing to other people too. It's kind of a way of like slowly investing if there's all the right different kind of documents and stuff. It's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, that is a super cool idea. And I like that idea. And I know I recently had a client reach out to me who was saying that instead of, you know, being on a wait list or whatever, they were just going to go travel and try and find a similar situation, you know, like room and board for work kind of situation. And I've heard that actually a couple times from a couple different clients.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like their baby daddy's like on work or is waiting for housing for Section 8 for a while. You know, it's like all these things. It's just a wait list. The wait list is out the door, and there's just like, you know, and I've called for, you know, rent support and stuff. And it's like, it's been, you know, it's been a while. It's like, I don't feel like any of these resources are actually really there. Like I'm feeling like less trusting of it. So kind of like just putting the matters in my own hands and like, this is what is possible, because I don't really feel, I haven't felt any of the support from any of these programs. You know, for my sister, that's, you know, she's been homeless for, you know, 15 years. And now she's like she had a baby and stuff. And it's like, there's been like no urgency in helping her, and her, you know, baby daddy's like trying, he's on Section 8 and stuff, but you know, it's like, it doesn't really feel like it's going anywhere with that either. So yeah, these programs, like they all sound great, but there's just such a long wait list that it's like, I don't, and like limited funding. I don't know if they're, I don't know if it's going to help everybody that it needs to.
Absolutely.
Like, I wish it would. Yeah.
And what that makes me think of is like, I wonder if that's something that we could use as that motivational factor for the people who do get into these rapid rehousing programs, like making it kind of clear to them, like, you're fortunate. There's long wait lists. If when your exit date comes, you're not prepared, be prepared to be on a very long wait list. Because that's just like kind of where my brain went with that. Since we are so low on time, I do want to give Kennedy kind of a chance to maybe ask some questions, because my idea for talking about exiting came from Kennedy mentioning to Forrest that there wasn't really a formal protocol for exiting. And I think the desire is to kind of create one, right? So I just kind of want to give you a chance if you have any questions or ideas to kind of speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, this conversation so far has been really helpful, you know, the talking about motivation and like engagement, because I think that's such a huge, I didn't speak up earlier, but for us in Santa Fe with clients, it's like, that's the biggest struggle, is that like that engagement piece. Because even if you have like a plan that you don't feel comfortable sharing, that engagement is really important, because we've had it where we have clients that get evicted in their last month in the program, and then we're kind of scrambling, and you know, again with the wait lists, you know, it's hard to figure out where people go once they're discharged. And for some clients that, you know, that talking about it during our monthly check-ins, that's super helpful. Other clients, you know, because they're in that survival mode, or you know, they're taking it day by day, that forward thinking isn't super present. They tend to forget that even though this is a 2-year program, there's that sense of, well, it's not going to end. 2 years is a long time. Yeah, I just want some sort of idea, and you know, kind of like what we've been talking about, with the things that are important to be talking about that we aren't already talking about. Things to, you know, if we were to make a formal transition plan form, like what are the things that we need to make sure that we talk about, employment being one of them. The thing with a transition plan is it's ideally right before discharge. So it's important, you know, if a client has a job, that's great. However, if this is a transition plan in terms of housing and they don't have a job yet, it might be hard to scramble and help them get a job when they have to pay rent in 3 weeks. So yeah, I just kind of wanted ideas on how and what to put on these transition forms and what's important to young people who are transitioning out of these programs.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, we've had a lot of great ideas here. I think one of the most important things that stuck out to me in this conversation was that mental health kind of aspect and that survival mode and how to address that. I'm not sure, like, there's no like easy like checkbox or question like that we could put on a form to kind of address that, but it is something that I think is important to address. And I think, you know, with that whole idea of you might have a plan like they're not, or they might have a plan that they're not comfortable sharing with you. Something that kind of came to my mind is there like a peer guidance kind of aspect to these programs? Like, you know, something that I've talked with Forrest about, and a lot of other people, is that when I call a client or when I like do a Zoom with a client and they see that I'm young and I'm like, you know, I'm tattooed, my hair is purple, I get a lot of like more straightforward answers than they're giving to a lot of their case managers. So I'm wondering if there's kind of like a peer support aspect that we could bring into this process. You know, like somebody who's either been in the program for a little bit longer, meeting up with somebody who's just starting the program, or somebody who's successfully exited and is willing to kind of give their time to communicating with somebody who's just entering. That's just an idea that I've had.
Yeah, I could see that being helpful because I think especially in STAR, we tend to have like those clients that we know would be really good for that pop into our heads, whether or not they're already in YAB, you know, those clients that would be willing to talk about that stuff probably are already in YAB. The thing is, you know, and what I've found about Santa Fe, and this has just been my experience, it might be different for other people, is there's a different sense of community here. Like a lot of our clients, they know each other. They've already built that community, and they kind of use each other as backup and support. And we find that during our life skills classes too, is, you know, they're like, whoa, I didn't know you were in this program. And then, you know, continuing to build that sense of community. So I can see that being helpful. Going back to like Santa Fe is like, there's not a super strong sense of community though. Like people wanting to build that network if they don't already have one. That's kind of like more individualistic. That is what I found.
Yeah, I think instead of you know, just giving like supporting each other within a community, instead of just supporting, you know, people like flagging and flying a sign and stuff, instead giving them money while they're, you know, out there flagging, give them, you know, pay them to work on some sort of project or something that would give them equity back in to like the person that's paying the person. So they would have like, I think that would be a really cool way to build, you know, community and kinship with, and kind of break down the barriers of the classes and kind of empower both people on both ends of that transaction. I've never seen it been done before. It's just kind of a new concept. Maybe it has, who knows?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I've kind of been discussing a little bit within like the YAB is alternative forms of employment, because a lot of the youth that we're going to serve are the kind of people who aren't going to want to be a cashier or be a waiter or play into that like system. So I'm curious maybe to kind of develop like a resource list of alternative employment. You know, I recently found out that a lot of our YAB members are in YAB because they want to work in this line of work. With housing. And so I think maybe that's something that's kind of important to do in the exit form, is like do you see yourself working an entry-level job, or what kind of job would you like to do, and what kinds of things can we provide you with to kind of make that goal a reality? You know, when I was on the streets, I never thought I'd be here in this space with you guys. I wanted to be Paige at Street Outreach when I was on the streets. That was my goal. I was like, I want to be Paige, but I didn't go to college. I barely graduated high school. That's not a reality. And then this job kind of fell into my lap, and it was super coincidental. But I think that if I had been told back then, like, there are ways you can do this. There's the YAB you can join, and that's a little bit of money and also job training for the line of work that you want to be in, or whatever that career goal is. Maybe focusing kind of on that and alternative ways of employment might be something good to add in there. And that's kind of the end of my idea. I want to kind of open it up to anybody else who has any ideas for this exit protocol, things that you wish your own program had done, or things that you have done that seem to work really well. And we only have a minute left, but I do want to open up the floor for you guys. And that might be all the ideas that we have right now. But yeah, if anybody does have any more ideas, if you go into another meeting and then something kind of pops into your head, feel free to contact myself or Kennedy, or send out a group email to whoever. But yeah, this is a really awesome conversation, and it's one that I want to keep working on, because I think really kind of like fine tuning the exit process is how we're going to get more successful exits, because that's the goal. Like I said, a lot of the youth going into these programs have this temporary mindset of like, I have a house for 2 years. But we all know that that's not the goal. The goal is to set them up for success past that 2 years. So I want this to be an ongoing conversation, and I do really want to get a really solid protocol or plan in place for you guys who are working with Rapid Rehousing. But we are at time, and I do really appreciate each and every one of you for spending this time with us. We'll see you next month, next Wednesday, or not next Wednesday, the first Wednesday of December, which will be December 7th. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, comments, or ideas, please never hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always here, and I'm always open to new ideas. And yeah, that's all. And I hope you guys all have an awesome day.